Well, I want to welcome everyone. Today was a tough day. I spoke with Pete this morning at 9 o'clock. Great conversation. He's very professional and he understands. And we have a very good relationship. But that's what makes it probably the hardest. I want to thank Pete. First of all, he's a great man. He's a great coach. And he had great success here in Dallas. And I have the utmost respect for him as a person and a coach. In the end, it's my responsibility to make a decision that's the right decision for the organization moving forward. And after a year-end review, talking to players, exit interviews, medicals, everything we go through, we got together as an organization. I got together with Pete, talked to everybody, and I just think it's just time right now to make that next step. And it's a decision we have to make. And like I said, we're very comfortable with our decision, and we look forward to moving to the next step. I'll start the process now of interviewing coaches and go from there. I'm going to really open it up to questions now. Go from there.
A lot is going to be made about the comments that DeBoer had at the end of season media availability and after the Game 5 loss about Jake Ottinger's performance specifically. How much did that and the potential, strain between the players and the coach play into your decision?
The events that took place, that's a component of it. But there's other things that take place also. It's one part of it. But there's other things that take place during the season. As I mentioned, my job is to analyze everything during the year, where things at, even the prior years. But it was a component of it. But it wasn't the final decision when we made this decision.
How much did that player input play a role in the decision?
What I do at the end of every season, players, they deserve to be heard. I've been in the business a long time, and I interview all the players. I tell them to be truthful with me. But I've been around long enough to know if a guy's only getting 5 minutes ice time, he's not going to like the coach. I understand that. So I take it all in. I analyze it. We talk about it internally. So some of it comes into play, some doesn't. You have to really balance those things off.
If the Ottinger stuff in the ending was just one component, then was he in trouble even if you won the Edmonton series?
That's, I don't know that, till you get to that end, to the situations that I really can't answer that. It's something I would have analyzed, but, it did come into play, but that's would have been something I would have analyzed more, so I really can't say whether it would or not.
Tom, the day after, he wasn't inclined to make a coaching change. What changed between then and now for him?
We talked through things, and we were trying to calm the waters too. You want to, you end the season. It's an amazing business. So we got to the third round, and it feels like we've missed the playoffs 5 years in a row. And I find it amazing, the mindset but that's the world we live in nowadays. So when the season ends, you want to calm the waters. You want to sit back and analyze everything, and that's what we did, and made some other decisions.
What is going to happen with the staff, and then what's the process of hiring a new guy? Do you have a vision of what you need for a new coach?
We're just starting that process now. Have a vision. We're going to be very wide, open-minded. The other coaches, everything's fine with them. I plan on them being part of this. They've done a great job. They have a year left, and they did a good job also. Done a lot of winning.
You said that you felt like it was time for a new voice in the room. Does that mean that any, like a Nazardine or Spot or somebody like that is not that new voice, or are you going to look at internal candidates as well as external? I'm
going to look at everything. I'm going to look internally. I'm going to look externally. It's different when you have a voice as an assistant coach, whereas you have a voice as a head coach. So I could be open-minded to all of this.
Do you feel like Pete lost the room?
No, it was, Pete and I were talking, and we were talking during the season. After the Four Nations, it was a grind. It was a grind. Now, for different reasons. We had a lot of injuries, major injuries to the team. The schedule's a grind as it is anyways, and every team goes through grinds. It's the way it is. But the injuries really hurt us, and Pete felt like he was pushing every button he could in that. and I respect that he was, and so I respect that, and so that's comes into the decision making too.
What was your reaction when he pulled Ottinger in that game from where you were in the arena? I mean, did you agree with it in the moment?
Yeah, I'm glad that's brought up. I got no problem with the pull at all. If you're coaching, we've just let 2 goals in. You got to change momentum in that. So to change the goalie, I got no problem with that at all.
Did you have an issue with his comments after the game and even the day after?
I think everybody did. I think even Pete is a little bit remorseful of it, a little bit. So I don't think he handled that the way he wanted to. But you got to remember, you're under duress, the pressure of everything going on in that.
Did he express any of that in your talks today? And
Yeah, I've been talking with Pete all week, so we've had some great discussions in that. Yeah.
Jim, were you surprised that when he came in this room 2 days after that loss, that he still hadn't spoken with Jake?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. No, I'm down in that room and that, and there's a process that goes through that. I get back to, we played the game Thursday night. Friday, your head's spinning. You just lost it. What it takes to get into the first, second, third, fourth rounds, it's just depleting. And all of a sudden you go from Friday's nothing, and Saturday we're having exit interviews, and he comes and sits here's where I'm sitting right now, and you guys start seeing him talk to Jake, and it's just like, well, no, I haven't. No, I haven't. Like there's a lot going on in Jake's head, a lot going on in Pete's head. So kind of an unfair, I guess, judgment on that situation.
Knowing his history, 6 straight playoff trips, making the conference final, and we've seen the emotion, from him of coming up short 6 times in a row. What do you evaluate of that aspect of his journey and handling emotions with that?
Well, I know there's a lot of coaches out in the NHL would love to have that resume. He's a great coach, and he's disappointed he hasn't made it either. But that's what keeps you going. And, he's going to move on. He's going to coach another team and probably do the same thing.
he's been fired a handful of times over the past decade. Why do you think that is?
It's a tough gig. Coaching's a tough job. And the athletes nowadays, the money involved, the pressure that goes into it now, it's a tough job. And it's you're dealing with 20 to 30 players in that room all the time. And these guys are thoroughbreds. They're wired. They're the best in the world, and they want their ice time. They want this. It's a tough job coaching, and I give a lot of respect to all the coaches in the NHL. It is a tough job.
You talk about that resume, other coaches would kill for that resume. And when you think about some of the hardest decisions you had to make, when you factor that in, how hard was this for you?
This was very hard. You stand up here and you've been to the third round 3 years in a row. And to sit up here and have to make this decision. But in the end, I know what I have to do for the organization. And that's not disrespecting Pete. Pete's a great coach. He's a good man. I respect him so much. But in the end, I have to do what I think is right for the organization moving forward.
Is there some
Sorry, with a team that's been this close, is there an inclination to go lean toward a veteran coach as opposed to somebody who hasn't coached in the NHL?
Yeah, we're talking about that internally, but I want to be open-minded. There's some good young coaches out there. I'm going to use an example. Jim Montgomery I brought in here and did a great job. For some other circumstances, things happened, but now you see the job he's doing. He did in Boston and did in St. Louis. So much like the players are different from 15 years ago, I think the coaches are different from the past in that. These guys are they're career coaches, they're well schooled, they live and diet, and eventually there's going to be another, where's the next Pete DeBoer? Where's the next Scotty Bowman? They're out there somewhere. And so we want to be open-minded to that.
Along those lines, this team, 3 straight conference finals, there's almost an expectation that's where next season starts in the conference finals. How hard is that to do? You know what the roster is, you know what the salary cap
Yeah.
is.
No, it's a great question. It's hard. It's hard to do, but that's our goal again. Get back at it, and that. And just to back up the other question you asked about what type of coach, our assistant coaches are very experienced. We got a good staff here, very experienced. So I'm not too worried. You bring an experienced guy in, great. Being an inexperienced guy, I guess inexperienced term in that, he's got great support. So just to kind of verify that.
Jim, you basically have less than a month between the draft and free agency. What's the process for making alterations to your roster to improve it, but you're also trying to find out what your style of play or what your philosophy is going to be, because now you have to install a new head coach. What is that process for you?
Well, we got, I'm starting the coaching process right away. If you want to ride, you can ride with me down to Austin. Our farm team's still playing, so you can come down there with me and we can hash it over in that. So we're busy with that also, which is great. Those guys are getting development down there. And then we have our scouting meetings coming up here next Thursday and Friday. So that's when we'll really kind of sit down and say, okay, we got some decisions to make, signing guys. We got you got cap issues we've talked about, different things going on. So it'll be a hectic 3 weeks here, but we'll get it done. I got a great staff here. And,
Is that
Jason
an
Robertson.
invitation to all of us to ride in the car?
yes, well, yeah, well. We'll see. No, just kidding. You're always welcome. You're always welcome. I'll get the big Suburban. We'll all pile in.
Jason Robertson contract expires at the end of next season. Have you guys broached the subject of extensions, or where does that go?
Yeah, we're not allowed to yet. We just got to wait. And he's, just to clarify things, so he's still restricted the year after. So, but you can't do anything until July 1st. So, like I said, we've got this going on. I got scouting meetings going on. So,
But just in terms of the player, is that a player that you would want?
definitely, he's a good player. So it's somebody that, like I say, we'll see where the signings go. How do you fit in the cap? Those are decisions we have to make moving forward here.
Jim, speaking of leadership, we were in this room last September, talking about Jamie Benn entering the last year of his contract. He said as long as you're the GM of this team, you want him to be in a Stars uniform. Has anything about that changed?
I talked to Jamie exit interviews, and he wants to continue playing, and I want him back. And now we just have to work on the contract. And he's being very patient. He knows our situation. He's kind of unique. He can be bonused, so that really changes his contract's status for us, which helps us.
With Matt Duchene, similarly, I know he said he's kind of looking for more security. Does that maybe price him out of you guys' plans, or is that something you feel like to do?
That'll depends what he wants for security and how much money he wants. Those are the things we have to juggle. That's why we're meeting next week. Those are things we've got to juggle here. And the calculator stops at that 95.5, and after that it just goes red numbers. So those are things we gotta figure out. I'd love to have Matt back. He was our leading scorer, and he's a good player and a big part of our dressing room.
You also mentioned being open-minded in coaching search and driving down to Austin. Of course, Neil Graham's down there. When you look at a coach like that who's had a lot of success, he hasn't coached in the NHL before, but is that something where you want him to get experience on the NHL bench before taking the head job, or would he be a candidate for that head job?
I think he's probably going to be a candidate. He's done a good job. Someone we've got to look at. And like I said, gone down there, all he's done is won and developed. And that's not easy to do in that league. It's a tough league. And we've had different rosters. We've gone from, the Borks and Stankovens and Harleys, some of the best young prospects in the world there, to now a little bit more of the free agent style and older. And he keeps winning and he keeps developing players. We got some young kids down there that we signed as free agents out of college, and now they're playing great. And so he does a good job. Real good job.
Pete, what's your take on from the end of the Winnipeg series when this team was on a high to the disappointment of the Edmonton series? How did you view that?
Well, every series is unique in itself. Every series is a grind. You got to remember who we played. We played Colorado the first round. They could still be playing. That's how good they are. They could be a Stanley Cup champions. Winnipeg Jets, same thing, could be Stanley Cup champions, best team in the league all year. And they don't get enough respect. To win the President's Trophy in this league, that's hard to do. And, I talked to them after the series, and then they said, the reason they won this President's Trophy is because we were chasing them all year. They weren't going to let us catch them. And so that's a compliment to us, too, that we did it. So every series is different. And then we hit the Edmonton series, and I just felt like we never got it going. But we never got our game going. Now, I want to give a little bit of credit to the opponents. And, watching them play, the old Edmonton Oilers used to be a team that they get up by 2 goals and they wanted to make it 5 goals. And you could maybe expose them because of that. Now I watch them play, they get up by 1 goal, they're happy they buckle it down and away they go. So I got to give some credit to them. I watched the game they just won in overtime. They gave Florida 4 shots on goal in the third period. Sounds familiar to what happened to us. So let's give some credit to them and credit to Florida, who's the defending Stanley Cup champions. Two really good teams.
Jim, when you think about the change you want moving forward and what didn't work just now with Pete, how much of that do you feel like is style of play versus culture?
I don't see a culture problem. That's what's great. I go through these exit interviews, and we made a bunch of trades this year, and I love to bring new players in and ask them, talk to them, and say, hey, you guys have been on other teams, good teams, bad teams, whatever. How can we be better? And the first thing they say is, this room here is unbelievable. They've never seen such the leadership in it, the calmness in it, how they stick up for each other. So when you hear those things, something's pretty good there, culture-wise. And you got to be careful with it, tinkering with it. So not worried about that. I think we need to be open to some different styles. We didn't score a lot of goals in the playoffs, in that last round, really the whole playoffs. Do we need to look at something different in the offensive zone? Do we need to look at something different, how we move the puck? Those are things we got to sit and discuss. Those will be some of my questions as I speak with the next potential candidates and go from there.
To that end, you see sometimes a lot of teams will make decisions hastily and rely on player input, but as you just mentioned, this group, a lot of leadership, veterans, guys who've been doing this for a long time. I mean, is there concern or any fear that maybe you're relying too much on player input to make this decision, or is it because of that group you feel confident and convicted in what you're doing?
Well, like I said, I've been around a long time, so I know what's sincere and what's not in the room with the input. But I also go back to just, how can I back that up, what I'm saying to you? We've been one of the top 5-10 teams in the league over the last 4 or 5 years. So something's going right. Like if it wasn't, there'd be a hole in the dike here somewhere. So a lot of things 3 years straight Western Conference doesn't seem to hold much pedigree anymore, but that's hard to do. So that's where I listen. Like I said, I know when there's noise out there, when somebody's self-serving, but I also know when guys are sincere and what they believe in. And I back that up with the results of what the team's done. That's all I can do. And what you said is also true. You got to be careful. On both ways. You can start tinkering. You can start. I remember back in my Detroit days, we'd lose what we're going through. We'd lose in the 2 years in a row in the second round or third round, or lose in the finals, and everybody wanted to blow it up. We were too slow. We weren't big enough. We were da-da-da. And I remember Kenny and I sit down and saying, you know what? It's a pretty good team. Let's be careful, because you can go backwards awful quick in this business. You got to be real careful.
Every NHL opening that we see, there's a tendency for the same set of coaches to get rehired. I guess from your perspective, would you even look at or consider a European coach, given how many European players you have on your team?
Yeah. No, we've discussed it. The year when we hired Pete, we actually interviewed a European coach. And so we're open to that. You got to make sure they got a little bit of experience, because it's just put yourself, the first time you're working and you start traveling around to these rinks and you don't know how, where do you get in the dressing room at? How do you get in the back door? And you got to remember, players are watching this too. They want to see, does this guy know what he's doing? So it's a fine line, but we've looked into those. Yes.
Jim, you mentioned, just now when you hired Pete, casted a wide net then. Are you 2 or 3 steps already down the searching route? Because I'd imagine you already had built a list of names, 3 years ago. You've done this recently. So
Yeah. We
make this easier, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if it's easier. I wish I wasn't doing it, but we have a list, and we talk internally all the time about this. We even in our scouting meetings, we'll talk to our scouting staff, and we ask them. These guys, scouts are out there all the time. Who's the up and coming coach? Who's in Kitchener or Barrie, Ontario right now that's an up and coming coach? Who's out in Medicine Hat's an up and coming coach? We're always, as we scout players, we try to do the same with coaches.
How much did you come out of this process feeling that a conference final was the ceiling for Pete?
No, I don't look at it that way. Yeah, no. Pete's going to win a cup. Unfortunately, won't be here, but he's going to win a cup. He's a good coach. He is a good coach, and I think he learns every time. we talked about his resume. He's been fired a few times. I think he's learning each time when that happens. He's open-minded that way, so he's a good coach.
You came up as an executive in the Scotty Bowman era in Detroit. I wonder what your definition of coaching stability is. Do you feel like that's kind of eluded you in your time here? And how much would you like to have a coach that's here 5, 6, 7, 8 years?
Oh, I'd love to have somebody be here that long. It's just it's a tough business. It is a tough business, and it's getting different now too. Money comes into play now. Coaches are making big money. There's different factors that come into play, and I get back to it's coaching, and I'm not only talking about hockey. I think at every level, it's a tough job nowadays with and I don't want to say the new athletes, but they're well educated. They know what they're doing, and they know where they want to get to.
When you think back on this past week, weighing this decision, was it back and forth? Were there times you thought that you would bring Pete back? And when did you ultimately make this decision?
Yeah, no, it was going back and forth. It's tough. I get back to him sitting up here, and I just let a guy that went to the conference finals 3 years in a row, and not easy to do. And I want to be careful. You can take a step backwards, as I talked about with players. You can take a step backwards pretty fast, and so in the end, we had internal discussion. I talked to Pete, talked to all the staff and that, and in the end, we had to make a decision that we thought was best for the organization.
What was Pete's reaction?
Pete was very good, very professional. He was very good. He's like I said, he's a good person. Him and I had a great relationship. We still have a great relationship, and he handled it very well.
You talked about maybe looking at some things and wanting to tweak them. Is one of those things the response to plays like the Sasha Rope hints? Is that something that maybe you'd like to see more response to?
No, I'm less worried about that. I can address that. You got to remember, we're in the Stanley Cup play. Trying to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and there was a slash. He was penalized for it. Now it ends up breaking his foot, so it's worse than what we thought. But you got to remember, during those games, I think the game was 2-1 at the time, and you start doing something stupid. You get to the point in the playoffs, you start doing things stupid, it's going to cost you. And so it's a fine line. The players weren't happy about it. Don't worry, they'd love to go, but in the end, you got to try to win. If we got up maybe 4-0, 5-0, different story. But we never got that opportunity.
Jim, on that subject, are there other injuries that maybe we don't know about that players would be dealing with during the
Tyler Seguin had a shoulder injury that was bothering him. He'll get rehabbed now. And you got to remember, Tyler, he came back from a tough injury, and it's amazing actually how he played. So he's going to have a whole summer now to do what he's got to do. Talked about Rupe's injury. That was a broken foot. It was amazing, the blood. The biggest problem with Rupe's was we couldn't get it to stop bleeding, and they had to take out vials of blood for about 2 days straight. That's why he missed the one game. Where it broke the bone, it just kept bleeding. So the way it broke, it just kept bleeding. So they had to take out vials. So that, and then Liam Bischel. Shoulder injury, and then he's a year and a half ago, remember, he broke his ankle. He had a plate put in, and he's getting out today. That's being taken out today.
Have you had a chance to speak with Jake about that moment and just where his confidence and how he's comprehended that moment?
Yes, yeah. No, I spoke with Jake. We had a good conversation. Yeah.
What was his sort of reaction and mentality?
Well, I think you guys saw him. I think he's disappointed. He's got a lot of pride. That's what I talk about, these guys being wired. He's got a lot of pride. And I don't think he understood if he was going to get pulled and stuff too. Those things happen. But it was just the piling on that he wasn't comfortable with, which I can't blame him.
Jim,
Pete said, oh, go ahead.
every time you've made an off-season coaching change, it's been after missing the playoffs or getting knocked out in the first round. Now you're making one after making 3 straight conference finals. Does this one feel significantly different than all of those?
They're all different, all for different reasons. They've all got, either it was a situation where I just didn't believe in the coach anymore, situation where he wasn't the right fit for the team, or a situation where it's just timing and it just doesn't feel right and we got to move on.
We have time for 3 more questions.
Pete said after game 5, he said he wasn't sure if he would call this year's team the best team of the 3 that he's coached. How did you view this team? How did you view this team over the last 3 years? Did you think this is the best team in the last 3 years?
I think when you look at it skill-wise, yes, it was a good team, real good team. Now, you got to remember, Miro didn't come back until late in the second round, and Robo was really never himself until probably the last 2-3 games. So Major, those are 2 of your best players. So that hurts, and that's part of the process of winning. You got to get a little bit lucky sometimes too. And we thought we were getting lucky because we were starting to get healthy, but we didn't quite get up to speed against Edmonton.
Personnel-wise, what more can this team do to kind of get over that hump?
That you just keep getting at it. You got to remember the age of our group. The Wyatt Johnson. It's probably the first year that Wyatt went through a little bit of controversy in the playoffs. He wasn't himself, but the league knows him now, and that's where he's going to take the next step. So we had different situations. We had a lot of guys that, for different reasons, didn't get their game going, and they're going to learn from that and come back at it.
One final question here.
I was going to say, what do you learn about Miko, and what role does he play going forward? Obviously, he's a big centerpiece of everything for the next 8 years.
Well, Miko was as advertised, maybe more. What really impressed me with Miko was his leadership. Overall, the Finns are a pretty quiet group when you see him around in that. He's pretty vocal. I really enjoy. He's wired. He's very disciplined. He's as disciplined an athlete I've ever seen. He knows what he's doing. He's got a plan. His preparation, pretty impressive. And like I said, he's everything we thought he'd be, and we saw it in the playoffs.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your time.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for everybody. Thank you, and enjoy the summer, and probably be talking in the next 2-3 weeks.